Hello and welcome back to Quarterlight. Quarterlight, if you don't know, is a small fledgling YouTube channel looking at car brochures from around the world. And today is the turn of the Chrysler Sunbeam, and with rebranding what turned into the Talbot Sunbeam. Yes, we'll look at a few different brochures, how the changes happened in what was a very small production run really. In the meantime, we'll run the credits, and if you would like to subscribe, that would be great. It's completely free and does help the channel. So the Chrysler Sunbeam and Talbot Sunbeam excuse me, was first launched in 1977 and ran up till 1981. Only a short production run and what was quite a rushed vehicle, created in only 18 months and manufactured up at the former Roots factory up in Scotland. The vehicle itself was based on a Hillman Avenger, sort of a shortened floor pan, and the engines indeed came from Hillman Avengers, at least the top two, the 1300 and the 1600. The 930 is actually from the Hillman Imp that was of course no longer around. The gearboxes were also from the Hillman Avenger, and yes, that helped it get into production quickly, but that also meant it was a rear wheel drive car, when at the time the trendy or fashion was to have small cars now being front wheel drive to create more room for passengers. But anyway, let's have a look at this first brochure and see what we can see, and then we'll look at some of how it evolved through that short production run. So the Chrysler Sunbeam, it was launched on the 23rd of July 1977, and it was quite a positive reception from the British automotive press. The advertising campaign at the time, which this brochure features, this is from August 77, so this is a very early brochure, and it's showing the advertising feature that was on the first cars. It was by Petula Clark singing "Put a Chrysler Sunbeam in Your Life," and that's what it's kind of like showing here on this front cover of this early one. One of the issues with it being such a rushed car, these headlamps were actually supposed to be Talbot or Chrysler Horizon headlamps, much larger units. They didn't have any at the time, so they threw in facelifted Hillman Avenger headlamps instead, which meant they had to be recessed. So slightly different front end than what was first sketched out or intended, I guess. Initially 3 engine sizes, 3 trim levels, so this brochure's got the smaller 0.9 litre engine, the 1.3 and the 1.6, and there's an LS, a GL and an S. So if I have a brief look in this particular brochure and open it up, we can see this first page showing the side of the Talbot Sunbeam, the new Chrysler Sunbeam, a family-sized hatchback that sets new standards of style, equipment, comfort, economy and space. Only ever a 3-door design. A lot of that was to do with the Chrysler Horizon or Talbot Horizon. There wasn't really that much difference in size really. So, and in particular the Sunbeam was a lot larger than the competition, so they kept it as a 3-door and they kept the Horizon as the 5-door to kind of like show the differences, that this was the smaller car. And like I say, a rear wheel drive car, which was sort of bucking the trend for small cars becoming front engined front wheel drive cars now. And we can see straight away these initial sketches, and you can see the intended front end with these larger headlamps rather than the recessed headlamps, which was just hurry up, we have to do something, let's throw these Hillman Avengers lights in here. But quite a stylish looking car, I think. It is a nice design. And like I say, 3 trim levels. This is showing the LS. One of the disadvantages with the design, it was kind of like a Hillman Imp in some ways. It was just the hatch itself that opened up, and that created a huge lip, so very difficult to put heavy objects in the back. But of course, this kept sort of the strength and integrity of the vehicle, because leaving that lip high makes a much stronger vehicle. And then we've got the GL, which kind of shows a better example of how that, I guess, true thing really, isn't it? A hatchback. It is literally just the hatch opening up rather than opening up all the way down. No rear wiper you can see on the first 2 specs. And also we get a look at this interior, which is quite a nice interior with the split folding rear seats on the higher trim levels, making quite a practical car, even though it was just that little glass area that lifted up at the back. And then finally we get to the top of the range model at this time, the Chrysler Sunbeam S. Now we've got a rear wiper, although you'll notice because of the design of the hatch, it has to be positioned at the top there. And the problem with that is when you wipe the screen, it's sort of like the stop position's there. So as soon as you stop the wiper, all the water runs back down the screen with gravity. So it had its little quirks, but overall I think it was kind of like a good little car, and it was a reasonable performer. In some ways, that rear wheel drive design made it quite a fun little car. And as we got to higher specs and sort of more sporty versions of the Sunbeam that came later, it was quite a fun car to drive, and indeed it had some rally success as well. And then finally we'll get to the specs. We'll have a quick zoom in on the specs to see them a little bit better. So I'll try to zoom in a little bit there just to give you a better look at that. And of course you can pause the video if you want any specific details you might want to see on the specification page at the top. From left to right, it's showing the LS, GL and S. And then if you look at the engines, there's that 930, which would have come from the Hillman Imp. The 1300 engine, which was 1295cc, and the 1600, which would have been 1598. If you wanted that top engine, you had to spec it as the GL or S to get that more sporty engine. And then it tells you what's different in each specs. So you had the LS base model, then you got the GL and the GL added additions like cloth inserts, seat trims, luggage compartment lamp, cigar lighter, door pockets, fold down divided rear seat backs, dipping rear view mirror and a centre console. So this is the time when, you know, even if you spec it to the top model, it's kind of like in today's view, it was still very basic packages really. Even if you went to the S, that added things like full width brushed nylon cloth seat trims, and various little things like rear fog lamps, floor carpets, tinted glass, and that sort of rear wiper on the back. So not high spec models by any stretch of the imagination. On the right hand side at the bottom there, I don't know if you can read it, but it's basically saying there, owing to an industrial dispute at suppliers' factories, some early Sunbeam models have been built without electronic ignition. As soon as supplies permit, the company, at its own expense, will replace the existing ignition with an electronic equipment. So very 70s, you know, the industrial action at the time at these Sunbeam factories. So some parts aren't being put on there, but they're saying, oh, don't worry about it, just come back and we'll refit it to the correct parts. So I think that's a nice little touch, a nice little bit of history in that particular brochure. Now what we'll do, I do have another brochure as well, and this brochure is showing the prices. So we'll have a quick look on the prices, and then we'll move on to look at how the specs changed over the time and how it changed into the Talbot Sunbeam. So this second brochure, the same front cover, but it looks like the dealer in the 70s has attached the price list on there as well, which is useful to give us an idea of how much these cars cost at the time. So the base model, the LS 1 litre or 930cc would have cost £2,450 and 3 pence, and the top of the range S 1.6 would have cost us £3,111 and 7 pence. They weren't really cheap cars, to be honest with you, even at the time. And we have to remember Chrysler was struggling. Chrysler Europe we're talking about here was really struggling at the time. If you look at companies like Ford, Vauxhall, British Leyland, this was way behind them. And even companies like Fiat, which was having a heyday, was even overtaking sales, as was Datsun. So it was a company in a lot of trouble, and it was still making losses, and really the prices weren't really that competitive for what was already an old design with that rear wheel layout. But anyway, we'll look at another brochure and we'll see how it actually advanced. So just a very brief look at this later brochure. This is probably from 78, a year later than that one we've just looked at, and now being shown as the biggest little car in the world, which is a strange little title, but I guess because really it was a car that really was bigger than it should have been. It was like out of scale in a way. It was bigger than its competition, hence why Chrysler made this only a 3-door and the Horizon a 5-door, because they were wasn't that much difference in size, I guess. But we'll look in this brochure. The main difference here is now we've got different trim level names. Really, there isn't really a great difference or a great change that's actually happened on the car. We've just got a slight change in trim levels. If we go to this interior trim, which I think this is a particularly nice interior actually for the Sunbeam, I particularly like this stylish steering wheel. It kind of like slopes out design. So quite a nice interior. Then we get this rather nice picture showing all the little bits and pieces on the Sunbeam. And you'll notice here this is where the trim levels change. There's still an LS, there's still a GL, but instead of an S, it's now called a GLS. Still with the same hatch design, still saying the GLS or the top model is the one with that rear wiper on. So not a great deal has changed, but we'll just zoom in on the spec levels to see what we've got now. So we've still got the same 3 engines, the 930, the 1300 and the 1600. But if we look at the bottom, we've now got the LS, the GL, the GLS. Instead of that S, it's now called the GLS, which I kind of makes more sense, I guess, because really the S wasn't really sporty in a way, really. I mean, it was just the top model, so they changed it to the GLS anyway. So now you can have a look at the options at extra cost. So we've got halogen headlamps, which are standard on the GLS, optional on the others, and it goes on to show those little differences. But we'll look at the next brochure, and that's when the real change happens. So this is the main change. Now we can see it's now called the Talbot Sunbeam, although it's just the same car. So Chrysler was still making huge losses, so it decided to sell the car. So that's Chrysler Europe, like I say, I should keep saying Chrysler Europe, decided to sell to PSA on the 1st of January 1979. And that exercise was a very rushed exercise, like the car itself was a rushed car. And that quite simply meant taking every Chrysler badge off there, or any badge that said Chrysler at least, and just sticking a badge that said Talbot on it. And you can still see it's still got that Chrysler badge on the grille, even though it now clearly says Talbot. So it was a very rushed affair, leaving the Chrysler emblem on there but replacing the words Chrysler with Talbot. So we're now calling it the Talbot Sunbeam. So as we turn the pages, we can see there's now same car that's been rebranded. As you can see, it's clearly the same thing, but we've no longer says Chrysler, we've got it as now the Talbot Sunbeam. One thing that did also happen, we've got a new model to the range, the Talbot TI, and that was based on the Avenger Tiger. In a 1.6 to 1598cc, but we've got twin Weber carbs and giving that 100 brake horsepower. And it was a very popular car with reviewers at the time. It was basically a stripped down version. Some of the equipment was taken away, and it was getting a more sporty looking car. Again, rear wheel drive, so it was a very fun car to drive. But again, with it also being rear wheel drive, it wasn't as roomy as its rivals. And you can see on here it had this sort of like a two-tone paint job. This isn't the TI, this looks like the GLS, just showing the nice seats in there and the ability to recline the seats. Again, we've got the specification page, so we'll just quickly zoom in on that. This brochure, incidentally, is dated January 1980. Specification page, we've still got the 930, we've still got the 1300, we've still got the 1600. And it's showing on here that the 1600 for the TI is the same engine as the 1.6 GL, but with those two Weber twin choke carburetors, larger valves, special pistons and manifolds on that particular TI engine. It's also showing the standard equipment. That TI wasn't the top of range in spec levels. It's shown in here it was based on the LS with the addition of quartz halogen headlamps, fully reclining front bucket type seats, front seat head restraints, door pockets, front passenger grab handles, front fog lamps, twin horns, laminated windscreen, self-opening backlights with that washer wiper. And then we've got the GL as we had before, and the GLS. One thing I did forget to mention, the GLS has got a vinyl covered roof. And of course, if you want to pause on here to see some more specifications, you certainly can do. I know it's small, but it's just about readable. We also ended up, after the rebranding, with my favourite Sunbeam, the Talbot Sunbeam Lotus. This arrived in April 79, so it never got the Chrysler badge. It was always Talbot Sunbeam, this one. Like I say, my favourite. I'm not going to go into too much detail on this particular brochure because I think it deserves an episode all of its own. And then finally we get to what the Sunbeam came to be. So this is September 1980 brochure for the 1981 model year. And we can see we finally got the correct headlamps, no longer recessed, and sort of matching more the Talbot Horizon. This is what the front should have looked like. We've also lost the Chrysler badge and we've actually got a proper Talbot badge finally. So this is kind of like what it ended up to become. And if we look inside, the same sort of ideas, but now we've actually got a proper Talbot badge on the back, whereas before that was just a blank space. Same sort of idea though, with these sort of just pop out sort of hatchbacks, if you will, without the lower part opening, but still this is kind of like what it actually became, and this is its final model year as well, so really only got it right at the very end. Similar trim levels, we've got an LS, a GL and the GLS, the top model still, and we've also still got the TI, and I think this is kind of like the nicest looking version of the TI. I particularly like it in this yellow colour, still two-tone. We've got very fancy seats. This very stylish TI. Really, this is like the hot hatch era, or the beginning of the hot hatch era, and it really sort of stands its own just on the looks alone. And then finally at the back, we've once again got a specification page. Not a great deal has happened, but I will just do a final zoom in on this if anyone wants to have a look at it. So the final specification page for this September 1980 brochure, we've got the same engines, the same trims, so the LS, the TI, the GL and the GLS. And of course, if you want to pause this brochure, you can do if you want to look at that in any more detail. I particularly like this one's got the colour and trim combination, so we'll have a quick look at that. So we've got ermine white, so you've got your TI, you could have that in ermine white, jonquil, which is that yellow colour that we just had a look at, and moonstone metallic, which moonstone, it sounds like it's going to be a metallic grey colour, I guess, but it's more of a metallic blue, also seen on the Talbot Sunbeam Lotus. And the other colours that we can get on the other models, royal bit blue, cherry, honey. I think honey is mean honey gold, sort of like a Hillman Imp colour. We've got tartan green, silver metallic and peony metallic. So there we go, the Talbot Sunbeam, and formerly the Chrysler Sunbeam. So it's a bit of a longer video today, but I think it's really important to show all this information. They're kind of like forgotten cars, or becoming forgotten. There's very little on the internet, very little on YouTube about the Sunbeam, so I wanted to collect some information together and put it in one video. And like I say, I'll have a separate video at some time showing that Talbot Sunbeam Lotus at some time as well. But thank you for watching. Please do like and subscribe and comment. It all helps the channel, and we'll see you very soon. But for now, we'll say take care and goodbye.